Hi, I'm Victoria.
I'm Grace.
And we're
Colors of Cannabis.
I feel like the lighting happened at just the right moment too. The flick.
I was like watching with anticipation. Well, guys, if you haven't already, as I always say, grab your piece, light up a joint, because we're getting ready to sesh. And today, our hot topic is consent and cannabis, and is interesting for me. I had a tough time with this topic because I didn't think we'd have enough to talk about. But as we conversed about this earlier, we have very different viewpoints. And just in doing that, realized that it's
worth talking about. Well, so based off of feedback, we've spent a lot of time discussing just how we want to format, our show. Like you might have noticed, we've changed from an hour to 30 minutes. So we really appreciate the people who are taking the time to tune in and listen to us. And we appreciate those of you that care enough to give us feedback. And so we were discussing some of the topics we wanted to come about and talk about. And we bullet pointed this, and we were really excited in the moment. And then we came back to it, and we're kind of hesitant to talk about it. But I think it just highlighted the fact that we are so different and have different viewpoints. And people enjoy hearing those different viewpoints. And that's why we wanted to do this.
Yep. Just blowing out that hit I just took out of my pink girly bong. I realized I don't like the topic, but it's because it makes me uncomfortable. Because I guess it reinforces that I guess there do have to be guidelines when
Agreed.
We're talking about anything that can alter your state of mind. And so cannabis is still a controlled substance. And so while it may not affect me as a regular day-to-day user, it might, impair the judgment of someone who doesn't. And that joint is killing me right now. Sorry, I keep losing my train of thought because it's a hemp wrap paper, and I realized that after. I was like, why did I have that on the tray by itself? Someone gave it to me, and I'm like, maybe I have something against it in an enclosed space right here.
And I lean more towards the joint because it's easier for me to smoke during our filming than it is to take hits from the bong.
That's true. It is easier.
And yeah, but I get it. The smoke can be a lot, so I apologize.
It's the secondhand thing. Like, it's not hitting you.
I agree.
I'm going to get a little fan for next time. I actually have a tiny little pink fan.
A nail fan.
Match. Yes.
A nail fan.
And it'll blow it away. Anyways, what were we talking about?
Consent and cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Poop.
And Grace doesn't really feel like we have a lot to talk about, but I felt like it was a current topic, and we're not mentioning anybody specific, but there was an article that came out over the summer that I found to be really interesting. It was written by a writer that's written in Vogue and Elle and all of these magazines, and she interviewed someone in our industry, and they talked pretty heavily about consent and cannabis in a really smart, well-informed way. And I think
there's just the stance.
Basically that smoking cannabis can have the ability to take away your ability to give consent. And I do agree with that. Anything that makes you feel intoxicated, that you're not used to, I think that's what it does, right? But there's just so many things that you talk about, like what's informed consent? Like, are you agreeing to everything that happens, even if you're totally into it in the moment and you're saying yes? Like, does that change as you consume more cannabis through the evening? Like, there's just so many things that happen as you're consuming cannabis, and I feel like there's stages.
Well, is there a rule currently for alcohol?
No, there's no rule for alcohol of this is where you can't give consent or anything.
So what determines it then?
I think it's a personal viewpoint, and I think it's knowing yourself well enough to know when you can't give consent.
But if you're inebriated, how do you know to give consent?
I think
Isn't that the argument? Because
So-
I'll tell you what, when I'm drunk, I don't drink often. So I would not want anyone to take anything I say as any form of consent.
I think that's where it becomes really important to have a good level of communication with your partner, right? And we live in an age of casual sex. And
What do you
Even
mean
if-
by casual sex? Because that could be different. My idea of casual sex could
even if it's like
be
a one
different
night
than-
stand, like I'm
Oh,
and
see, that's
granted-
not my idea of casual sex.
See, and I guess that's my idea of casual sex, right? Because I've been married for 10 years and I'm watching the dating world evolve and I'm seeing things like Tinder that did not exist when I first started dating. Like, literally, when I first started dating, there were still ads on the TV for party phone lines where you like call in and there's like 100 people on the phone and you have sexy conversations and yeah, whatever happens on the phone happens on the phone. Like, that's yes, I'm that old, I know.
Sorry, guys. This is like back in the landline times. Some of you may not know what that is. Google it.
It really was, but party lines were a thing, the chat line. And so I'm seeing how
You should explain what that is.
well, that's what it was. It was you call in and there's lots of people on the phone and you're trying to hook up. But
There was no internet, guys.
there clearly was. There was just a dial-in sound as you got there.
At that point, when those first existed, the internet was not something every person had in their home. It was a luxury that you and I
This was
share in
2001.
having. But I'm just saying, there's still people today who don't.
Agreed, but it was 2001, so it's not like it was really that uncommon.
Oh, okay.
So
When
2001
was
to
I was in-
like
I was in
2010
high school.
is when I was dating. And so, but that's how you dated. It was just a much more analog version of what I think of dating to be now and how, like, what I imagine casual sex to be. Like, I see my girlfriends on Tinder and, like, you can see by miles how far someone is. And there's only one reason to have that feature. It's like, how quickly can you come have sex with me?
I thought it was for compatibility because if someone lives in your area, you're more likely to have a meaningful relationship.
No.
Yes.
No.
No, but it can be that because that's how I use it.
I mean,
And
maybe.
it's for the user. I'm just saying, like, when I'm on it, if you're 50 miles away, I'm less likely to have the type of interactions I'd like as
Right.
often as I'd like. And so I'm less likely to match with someone 50 miles away.
Agreed.
It's not about
I don't know.
a now thing.
I feel like it's now for
Was
some
that
people.
Burger King, I want it my way.
Probably. I feel like that's now for
they
for
still
some
around?
people. Yeah. I'm like, how do you not eat at Burger King? But anyway,
Where is there a Burger King in Hollywood?
I don't live here.
Where is there a Burger King? I watch now. All these people are gonna be like,
Right.
Burger King's on.
Right.
I don't know of one, not one.
I love Burger King.
My
I know
first
there's a
mushroom
Chick-fil-A like
trip.
not too far from here.
Yes,
but
there is.
yeah,
Oh, that's controversial.
it is.
I've stopped eating there.
But I like my
It's a
bigot
half-truth.
chicken. I can't even lie. It is what it is. They
I've
make a good
tried
chicken
to
sandwich.
make an effort to stop eating there. I've stopped eating there for the most part, but like, if someone brings it over, I'm not gonna be like, no, I'm not eating that chicken sandwich. Throw it away.
Right, because it's good.
I know, and they put the extra pickles.
Oh, I don't like
Why
pickles.
do they have to
I
be
don't
so
eat pickles,
racist?
but
Not racist, homophobic.
they are. But regardless, in my idea of casual
killing me with
sex
this.
nowadays, I guess you're not really
It was
able
the
to have
joint
these
that I was saying she was killing
conversations.
me. Sorry, I just talked over you.
It's okay. I don't think you're really able to have these conversations where if you make a little bit of a friendship, even if it's casual, you can say, hey, even if I am consuming and this is going on, I might not be able to give consent. So maybe hold back.
But that's still implying that you have had that conversation before and you're friends.
That's
Most
what I'm
of the
saying.
time,
You got to
as a
give
single
yourself an
person,
opportunity.
it's like
Yeah.
I'm meeting someone on the spot. So for me personal, as an everyday consumer, there has not been a point where I would say Wait, actually, even as I was about to make that statement, semi-recently, I took an edible. It was 200 milligrams. And I could barely stand.
Yeah.
It was at a party, and I went and I sat down in a corner on a couch and didn't move for hours. And this guy was like really trying to talk to me for like a minute, and another girl came and actually kind of helped the situation.
Right.
But I'm thinking about that one time, and I guess that's the problem, is that one time.
Yeah.
And I'll be real, I still knew I didn't like him. I knew I could speak. I could still say, no, I don't like you. But I am a really heavy user, and that was probably the one time where I felt like I said, I couldn't stand. So he could technically whisk me away. I'm, not that heavy, and he could just take me and go. So I was a little off on being able to give consent. My point is, as a day-to-day smoker, having it affect me that strongly, if someone was even just a casual smoker, that 200 milligram edible may have taken away their...
I believe it absolutely would have.
What's the word I'm looking for? Not taken away their consent. The 200 milligram edible might have taken away their... I don't know. Does it take away inhibitions? I'm hesitant to make these statements.
It definitely takes away inhibitions. And at the same time, that also makes it hard to give consent, right? And that's why I think it's a conversation that happens between you and that person. Because I've been married for 10 years, and consent still needs to happen even in a marriage, right? Like, you still have to be able to say, I want to do certain things.
But what things do you want to do, Victoria?
Lots of things.
What things are we talking about? Why would you need... I'm just curious, after 10 years of marriage, what does Victoria still need to ask consent for before doing?
Anything new.
Like, what's new?
And there's lots of new things in the world to try. And with
so
that
we're trying
being said,
new things regularly.
Always. 10 years. And I feel like we're going to be married for like 50. Yeah, probably, but it's okay. We've come to some further discussions about what I can share, and so I feel like,
keeping it red.
Yeah, it'll happen naturally. But yeah, you do have to try new things, right? And you still have to be able to give consent. And a big way that I'm able to try new things is I do consume a lot of cannabis at that moment. And for a lot of people, they would think that I really couldn't give informed consent, right? But I've been able to have these conversations with my husband. We know what we're both doing. We know
what is the conversation of consent, because it's obviously going to be different than someone who's single.
Right. It more like, I might be a little messed up, but this is what's going down, right? We're on the same page.
You're saying to him that you're messed up, or you're saying he's messed up and you're asking? That's what I'm trying to understand.
My husband doesn't get to a point where he is ever out of control of himself.
Oh, that's a good quality, actually.
He has an amount of self-control over his ability to consume that blows my mind, except for when it comes to alcohol, and he doesn't drink alcohol. And one time I've seen him get wasted. And he used to work for like this company where he sold like police equipment, and he went to a policeman's trade show, and cops gave him whiskey shots, and he couldn't say no in that situation because of like, masculine, I have to be on these guys level.
I mean, he could have said no, but I understand the peer pressures of society and
exactly
cultural norms.
And he got so wasted, and he was like, I took 2 shots and I threw up, and he came home, he was like, I'm still wasted.
Oh,
his face was so red, it was adorable. One time I've ever seen him out of, control of himself. But yeah, he never gets to a point where he's not in control of the situation or himself. I'm comfortable enough with him and love him enough and trust him enough that I can consume more and know that he will always take care of me. We used to go out.
I want to push you to be a little more specific, because
I was about to be.
Okay. I still am trying to understand the consent part.
We used to go out quite a bit over the summers when we lived in Oklahoma. because my son would go stay with my mom for 2 months. So we would go out to clubs and we would party all night. And like the goal of all of that was to come home and have a good evening together, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this one night I had a bottle of off-brand tequila.
Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know why I did it.
I just, to
And
tequila.
I never get drunk, and I hadn't thrown up in years. This is how intense it was. I hadn't had a hangover. I hadn't gotten drunk in years. And I drank so much that night that as we were driving home, I felt the saliva pooling in my mouth.
Oh, no.
I was spinning
To anyone who has never
around.
had that feeling, that's
The
kind of
worst.
the preface to possibly being sick.
I mean, I had poisoned myself with this bottle of off-brand alcohol, and you know, my husband doesn't drink, so I'm sure he was looking forward to a good evening at home, and that's not what happened. What happened was he held my hair as I threw up. He made sure I got to bed safely. He checked on me. He made sure that I had bottles of water. He made fun of me, and I didn't have to worry that anything was going to happen to me. I felt completely safe. And I remember drinking when I was younger, and when we talked about that we're going to talk about this did instantly come to my mind because I remember being younger, and it didn't happen often, but there were times that I would get beyond an ability to give consent. Actually, I was drunk beyond belief.
But I do just want to make a really clear definition. In both stories, you've talked about alcohol being a factor. And a lot of our viewers are not necessarily going to fall in that pod. I'm not necessarily going to fall in that pod.
So
I don't like to mix alcohol with cannabis.
I consume both on all those occasions.
I'm just saying that from maybe I am biased. From a biased standpoint, I'm still standing up for cannabis, and I'm going to say I don't think it's fair. The second you add anything else, whether it be alcohol or any other substance, then we're not talking about cannabis and consent. We're talking about something completely different.
But I think we're just talking about consent in general, right? And
knowing yourself. I thought we were literally, because I'm trying to understand cannabis and consent. Alcohol and consent, I like.
So you mentioned it earlier, right? When you had that edible, you didn't feel like you can give consent.
That's what I mean, but that wasn't alcohol related.
Right, but it's...
I didn't say I couldn't. I still could, but I could, for the first time, see how someone who isn't as heavy a consumer as I am, in the exact same situation I was in, probably would have passed out or still been awake, but I don't know. Like the level to which I felt, I cannot imagine what a normal consumer or someone who doesn't consume and didn't know that could have been life changing.
You know what your level is, right? And you're informed enough about your body and feel comfortable enough with your capacity to know when you can give.
Then there is no consent.
What do you mean?
Then if we can't even decide what the standard is, then there is no consent. That's my standpoint. Then I'm going to go as far as to say, if we can't even decide person to person, then don't make that judgment call. And I just call that not having consent if a person's elevated on another level.
That might be the way. And honestly, I think that's part of the conversation too. Like,
people aren't going to like that.
They aren't going to like that at all.
But I just think, who's to say?
It is something to think about. Actually, like, you opened up my mind a little bit to where I'm like, you know what? It is hard to say. Like, how do you trust that the other person actually understands their capacity?
Because you keep saying we had a conversation, but I'm going to push you to think to the fact that, like, I'm not having the same conversations with partners.
I do think my conversations
are we having a conversation
are much different. And that's what I said. I don't think you get the opportunity to have that conversation when you're casually dating. And yeah, you just completely opened my mind. Like, maybe no consumption is the way to go.
Yeah. And I only mean, I'm not saying don't consume and then get
for
intimate.
For first time users.
But I'm saying, I think that, this is a hard one to say. I think that the standard, if we have to set a standard, is that if you're on a substance that we have all agreed changes how people think, we can't say, oh, to what degree and to who. So the standard is no. If it's your first time and you just met someone and they're elevated, they're high, I don't think you should be able to count that as consent. And I really get how intense that sounds to any viewer out there who's a regular smoker who's like, what? Because for me, sure, don't worry. You get consent because I'm not that high. But I don't want to have to make that decision for my little sister. And my little sister is not a cannabis user, but I took her when she was 16 and I was 21. I took her to a party, and it was like our first time where I'm taking my little sister, and I was worried. And so I said to her,
Did you get her high?
I wish. So I said to her, listen, if you're going to smoke weed or, drink alcohol, please come to me. Don't go to some stranger at the party. Now, I knew the person throwing the party, but just to set the stage, my friends were like really amazing artistic DJs. Yeah. So they took this whole house. It was a bunch of a group that lived there, and they decorated it. So there was it was morbid. There was baby doll heads hanging and blood splattered on the walls. And they give you 3D glasses when you walked in. It was sick. The DJ was spinning. Very cool party. I was a hip teenager. Anyways, so here we are, whatever. We're at the party, and my sister's there. And she's this Christian goody-goody girl. And she does no, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm like, okay. Through the party, one of my friends came up to me. And I remember saying to her, oh, you're Tigger. She was dressed what I thought was Tigger. And she said, no, Calvin and Hobbes. Would you like an edible? And she had made these, and I know this girl, so I'm like, oh, no. Because I know these are going to be mind-blowing edibles. And even as a daily user, I knew I couldn't hang with her edibles. So I said no. Fast forward through the party, I see my kid sister who does nothing, and she's with her friend, and she can barely stand. I'm thinking she's drunk. So I run over thinking, oh, my God, what have I done to my sister? I could tell she's got tears in her eyes. Something is wrong. I go over there, and she's Wobbles McGee. Yeah. And I'm like, what is it? And her friend is shaking his head, and he says, she ate the cookies. And I go, what cookies? And he says, they were weed cookies. I don't know, Tigger gave them to her? And I thought, oh, crap, Calvin and Hobbes. And I go, oh, shoot, that's my sister's name. We can bleep that. Anyways. So we can make a sound or something. So I say, oh no, my sister. Why would you eat the cookie? You don't consume cannabis. You said no to me. Yeah. Why would you eat the cookie? Because she said she knew it was a pot cookie. And this is what my sister responded. She said, Mom makes rum cake and nobody gets drunk. So I love that. My sister ate these pot cookies, and she said it was delicious, and she almost ate a second one. Thank God she didn't.
Thank God.
So I had to take her out of the party. It was too intense. So we take her out of the party, and I did my own little version of Arabic comedy. It's a whole other thing another time. And I made her laugh, and then her friend picked her up and took her to a Denny's where she sat for hours, guys. Hours consuming food because he couldn't take her home to my parents' house. Yeah. Who would have known Wobbles McGee had something going on?
Edibles hit
different.
So
I got to tell you, thinking about my sister in that moment, which by the way, unfortunately made it to where she didn't ever try cannabis again.
That's heartbreaking.
Because it was such an intense experience that she wasn't expecting, wasn't ready for. People, use responsibly.
I have a similar story. I went to a house party, and my sister was dating this young man by the name of Neil at the time, and we were at Neil's house. And
names.
It's okay. This was years ago. We've never heard or seen from Neil again.
Neil is a random term for names of people that we don't know at all. Fictitious.
But he was super hippie and eclectic, and so there was a ton of weed at this party, and all of a sudden pot brownies started circulating, and I was like, I have a super high tolerance, and I ate a slice that was about that big.
What is that big for our listeners?
I don't even know. Maybe a 2x2 brownie. And
so it almost looked like the size of a card, like a cards, like
Yeah.
a deck of cards.
A deck of cards. Actually, that's probably about perfect.
Okay, so the size of a deck of cards,
And
brownie with cannabis.
Nothing. We were there for an hour and a half, and nothing happened. And I was like, this is cool. So we decided to drive home. And if you're from the Inland Empire, I was on the 10 freeway getting ready to exit Archibald, which is where you go to the Ontario airport. And
now we're telling people where Neil lives.
No, he lived in Covina.
I'm sorry, Neil, wherever you are.
And there's 2 exits, one to the left and one to the right. And I know that there's 2 exits. And all of a sudden, I saw 4 exits. And I didn't drink that night. And that was from a cannabis brownie. And
are you saying that the roads split?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And so that was the first time actually in my life that I realized cannabis, I can't drive and consume cannabis, and it doesn't hit immediately when you're eating edibles. That was like actually a scary moment for me. I was 19 at the time. I mean, it was a scary moment for me, like to the point where as soon as
we
I
don't
exited,
promote driving
no, at all.
And using cannabis
First time
at all.
consuming edibles. I waited an hour and a half. Apparently I did not wait long enough. And it hit at such a delayed effect that honestly, that first hour and a half, I could have totally given consent. I could have totally driven. I was completely fine that first hour and a half right after I consumed. But the way it metabolizes when you eat cannabis, it hits at such a different time. It's a delayed effect.
Well, per person.
That it changes. Yeah.
I want to add that it's, again,
exactly.
This actually just, I feel like this reinforces the point I'm making that we don't have, like, there is no way of saying.
Agreed.
You and I, Victoria and I could each eat the same cannabis brownie, identical replicas. And it is going to affect each of us. Even though we consume cannabis to the same degree, it's still going to have a different effect because within everyone's bodies, we all have different endocannabinoid systems. Yeah. And that's a whole other show to get into what that is. I apologize for anyone who doesn't know. Look it up. But we have a system within our body that basically, in layman's terms, connects with cannabis for amazing effects. That's the most layman's terms ever. Nothing scientific about it because I want to have people that don't consume understand that. The point is, because we all have different systems, there are so many variables about how cannabis is going to affect person to person.
Agreed.
So I think for first time, assuming that it's, and for every time moving forward,
it's not a first time sexy time drug.
It's not a unless you're
a regular user or it's something that you become comfortable with.
No, there's still no
something you learn your tolerance with, I feel like.
Yeah. And then actually, I don't know if I can say this. So I had a partner who didn't use cannabis and it was an older than myself male. And we had a drink and then consumed cannabis. And it didn't even occur to me that it could have that effect. But he got what we call crossfaded. And for anyone who doesn't know what crossfaded is, go try it out. It's when you drink and then use cannabis and you get crossfaded. Now, please only do that in a safe, responsible place where you're not going to be driving and have Ubered to and from and have a safe, sober friend or just a safe.
It is time to pay for parking almost.
And we can cut really quick. Hello, we're back.
LA parking. It's a thing.
And that's really the only reason we had the phone there. We will figure this out for future.
Yeah, I think so. But I liked your explanation of crossfaded. I think it's perfect. It really is only for the pros.
Yeah. Well, tying that into what we were saying. So my partner at the time got crossfaded, and basically, I had to make a choice, which is interesting as the female. I know I really do want to say as a society, we kind of tend to think of it as like the male needing to be conscious of the female. But in this situation, I had to be cognizant of the fact that he doesn't consume cannabis, and I'm responsible for this other human now, and I have gotten him crossfaded. So,
Yeah.
I gave him some space to get it out, which sometimes that happens. You get sick. And then afterwards, I made the choice to instead be a good friend and not. And again, this is someone who I had been intimate with before.
Right.
But still, it's like it's inappropriate. Clearly, this isn't the time or the place.
Yep.
And I'll be real, a grown man, I mean, bigger than me, probably double in size. And I can clearly say he was in no state to give consent. Like, for real. Anything that I would have done at that point,
I think there's
really
an assumption that male consent comes from like their physical ability to have sex, and I disagree with that assumption wholeheartedly.
Well, we know that a man can still
I'm
gonna go there, get an erection while while not necessarily being turned on, and that's why male rape exists.
But so I have to go there because I watched so much of it during the holidays. But did you watch Bridgerton?
No.
Oh, you have to watch it on Netflix.
Oh, don't do a spoiler alert for those that watch. No, you can't.
But there is a spoiler alert. They deal with male consent in one of the episodes on a really heavy, really graphic level. And as I was watching
I got so uncomfortable by that. I'm like,
as I'm watching it, I was like, did they just show this happening on Netflix?
Like a rape?
Yeah. That's what it amounts to, in my opinion, but it has to do with male consent. And I thought that was really interesting. And then as I Googled it, because I'm like, is anybody else like seeing what I'm seeing on Netflix? The whole world was talking about this scene.
Wait, you Googled the scene?
Yes, because look, I'm addicted to Bridgerton now. I can't wait for the next season. You were gonna say you were addicted to. I've already started reading the books that this show is based on because the sex scenes are fire. The storyline is amazing.
But so what did it have to do with consent?
So the young lady is basically tricked into a marriage with a man that she thinks can't have children. And it takes place in like 18th century England. And so no one has explained to her the baby making process. And so like really the first time she discovers what sex is when she has sex. She gives consent. She's all for it. Like everything on the female end seems to be good to go until she realizes that can't having kids and won't have kids are two different things because she doesn't realize how children are made. So she feels like she got tricked into a maid.
I'm lost.
She got tricked into her marriage because he told her he can't have kids, but really he just didn't want to have kids. And because she didn't know that how you have kids is you finish within someone. This
is why you have to be an adult
to sign
into our YouTube page.
She decided, I am going to make him finish without asking for his consent. So basically she tricked him into getting pregnant. It was a crazy scene. The show is crazy, but watch it. It's good. But it brought up some topics for me. I even made my husband watch it.
You guys can't see my face, but I'm like really stumped. I think this is a different issue. I think, again, it's gotten off topic.
It's still consent, though.
I guess
you have to give someone consent to have your baby.
Oh, my God. That's like...
Consent is consent.
That's not even about consent. That's like such a different topic. You could go to jail for that. Like, I don't know. I don't even want to get into what that is.
You go to jail for rape when you don't give consent.
You know what? I'm going to be
so many
very
different
honest.
Forms
this
of consent.
Topic is really hard for me. I feel extremely uncomfortable.
I can tell.
I like don't even know how to. And I'm so almost curious now how other people feel. I guess
Me too, actually. I am curious how other people feel.
I felt like we had discussed talking about cannabis and consent, and I didn't even realize that was kind of maybe where my level of comfort ended.
Yeah.
And this is politely, I'm going to say a way huger topic than a 30-minute podcast could even hold for the last minute.
I agree.
I just, I don't want to end on that. I'm really stumped. I think that opened up a whole can of hurt and just, like, really not cool shit. Like, that's not, like, that's rape consent and, like, consenting. Yeah. I don't know. I'll stop on that topic there. But, like, yeah, wow. I probably won't watch that show, actually.
It's, as I thought about it, I'm like, it's a lot. But it's everything that everybody's talking about on, like, my mommy groups. I swear to God.
All right, mommies, get a new hobby, because that's, I don't know. Oh, did I just say that? I just offended every mommy group out there.
No, you didn't. They're durable.
All right, guys, consent. I don't even know where I stand on it anymore. I think until we have standards, don't do it. If somebody has consumed something and you guys aren't in a relationship where you've already had an open and educated conversation about it, I guess my stance is don't, because I don't want to have to decide what someone's level of intoxication or elevation is.
I agree.
And then the pregnancy thing, I have no comment. People, I don't know. Seriously, I hope that's just some movie shit. Like, no. I'm not even going to get into that. Because if that's, like, your real life, like, maybe that's what Dr. Phil is seriously around for. But that's not for our podcast. So, I don't know. Please stay safe and be elevated.
Good night.
Good night, guys.